"8 feet minus 9 feet tall BF throws heavy objects, screams, and chases." Witness year, 1987 season, fall month, October. State, Indiana County, LaPorte County. Location details. This was located just outside of the Kingsbury Fish and Game Wildlife Refuge. Nearest town, Stillwell. Nearest road, Highway 104. Observed. In October of 1987, a friend and I went camping just outside of Kingsbury Ordnance Plant, COP for short, in Kingsbury, in. We were about 1 to 11 halves of a mile off Hupp Road, which is the road that enters COP. We set up camp just before dark, around 6 p.m. or so. After about 45 minutes, my friend went home to eat dinner and call another friend of ours to come out when he gets off duty. Just around dusk, while getting fire started, I heard rustling in woods about 25 yards away. I didn't think anything of it at the time, and because of the population of deer out in that area, I thought it might be one. After about 10 minutes, heard noise again, but it was about 15 yards away this time. I yelled, "Hey, reel load," and the noise stopped for about 5 minutes. Then I heard grunting about same distance away. Getting nervous, I yelled again, "Knock it off." I then picked up a stick and said, "I have a gun." The noise stopped after 3 or 4 seconds, and as I turned to look at fire, I heard a loud thump to my right. I looked and saw a large tree stump that landed about 8 feet away. I turned around and faced woods and yelled very loudly, "Knock it off or I'll shoot." I then saw another large log come sailing through the air toward my direction and land about 3 feet in front of me and about 5 feet to left. I started running down a trail toward the road. I did not hear anything for about the first 100 yards, and then I heard rocks moving as if someone was running in the same direction as I, but they were on the RR tracks to my left. The sounds of the steps were about 1 second apart. I heard this for about 8 to 10 seconds. Then it stopped. I ran for about 25 more yards and stopped. It was dark and overcast skies, but still there was enough light to see where I was running. I turned and looked behind me and then to my left and saw nothing. I then turned back toward the road and focused on the streetlight ahead. Walking very fast now, I came to a dip in the trail. This is where I saw it, a large figure standing in front of me. The dip in the trail sloped down to about 3 feet deep and ran the depth for about 30 feet, then it rose again to ground level. The figure was standing in the center of the dip in the trail and stood at the same height as myself. I am 5 feet 9 inches, so the figure had to be from 8 to 9 feet tall. This thing let out the most god-forsaking scream, that it would make your blood curdle. I did what any normal person would have done. I took off running toward my right through an open field. I ran as fast as I could away from this figure. I finally reached my friend's front steps about 3/4 of a mile away. At first, I thought it was him, but when he came to door, he had been eating dinner, his shoes were off, and his mum said that he had not left the house. After he ate and our other friend arrived, we all went back out there about 3 hours later. The small tent we put up had been torn down and logs and stump that were thrown were lying in the spots that they landed. I have never forgotten this. For years I have dreams, nightmares I call them, about the creature and that terrible scream. Till this day I am still scared to go out there. Also noticed, I have heard stories of things that have happened in the area around COP, but nothing that I can remember. Other witnesses. No physical witnesses to the incident itself, but my brother and my friend saw how scared I was after this happened. My brother said that I was pale and still crying the next day when he came home. Other stories, nothing time and conditions. It was around 7:30 p.m. It was dark and overcast skies, but still there was enough light to see where I was running. Environment. There were woods near my location and fields behind the woods. COP was to my right and was a densely wooded area. Follow-up investigation report. Several phone conversations with the witness's brother and the witness himself provide a consistent and credible report. The witness is still bothered with dreams of the incident. Midwest investigator, K.C. Chance.
Campers have campsite visitor on 2 separate occasions near Campbellsburg. Year, 1997 season, summer month, August. State, Indiana County, Washington County. Location details. Near North Cave River Valley Road and West Cave River Valley Road. Nearest town, Campbellsburg. Nearest road, near North Cave River Valley Road and West Cave River Valley Road. Observed. I have had 2 possible, Bigfoot-related, incidents. I've wanted to discuss the older incident for quite some time but have hesitated to do so. The second incident occurred March 16, 2009 and unnerved me enough to go ahead with these reports. Note, see report number 25658 for the more recent incident. The first incident occurred in approximately August of either 1997 or 1998, I can't recall offhand the exact year any longer. This happened on private land near Campbellsburg, in. The terrain of this private land is moderate hardwood forest, heavy leaf litter and only mildly rugged. There are several caves, all of them quite extensive as privately held cave systems go. There is also a valley with a small creek and a disused cabin. We had two separate incidents. On the first night we camped at the top of the valley so we could look down on the cabin and creek, mainly because it was a very pretty overlook and we could see the stars. After dinner and a couple of beers, no one was intoxicated by any means. One by one we headed off to use the restroom downwind and far away from camp. On one side of camp was the valley and on the other side was a very steep incline leading down to a privately owned field that no one could trespass without risking at least arrest, if not worse. As I started out into the forest to relieve myself, I heard the distinct sounds of someone walking purposefully up this steep incline. The footfalls were heavy enough to be heard distinctly apart from the shuffling of leaf litter. I squatted down, thinking it was the adjacent property owner coming over to complain about noise or trying to chase us off, even though we had full permission to use this property. The footfalls stopped at the top of the incline and then, whoever this was, took off running full bore into the deeper parts of the forest. The footfalls were very distinctly bipedal and not the rapid sound of deer footfalls. I didn't know who this may be, so I called out to them. The running continued and no response was given. After I did my business, I went back to camp and the other persons agreed they heard the footfalls and thought it was me. None of us saw anything at that time. About 2 hours later we heard a very loud scream, starting at a low pitch and rapidly increasing to a piercing screech. We heard this only once and it caused the forest sounds to stop. About 2 to 3 minutes later the normal forest sounds started again. We then decided to turn in for the night, we had been creeped out enough. We slept in a van on our trip so we climbed into the van and fell asleep. About 2 or 3 a.m., one of the other persons on the trip yelled out and woke us all up. He'd awakened to see a large arm. He never specified anything other than it was very large and the hand was large and dark, reaching in the van window and taking food out of the front seat. We looked and the food was partially missing, the remainder spilled about the seat and floorboard. I can't say for sure if he was dreaming, hallucinating or just spooked from earlier and mistook a raccoon for an arm or something like that. Something had disturbed the food but I don't know what it specifically was, though I personally made the connection to our visitor from earlier visiting the camp. No tracks were found in camp but we could see where something large had ascended the steep incline the night before when we investigated the next morning. These were just gouges in the hillside and disturbances in the leaf litter, nothing more. But whatever or whoever came up that incline had marched right up and never hesitated. We didn't have tools to measure, photograph or record what we saw as we didn't think it was Bigfoot, but rather an animal or the other property owner at that point. We camped in the valley for the remainder of the trip without incident. We returned about a year later. We decided that we'd camp in the valley for the trip. It was creepy on top of the hill, plus we were still thinking the adjacent property owner would be angry again at us being up there with a bonfire and making noise at night. We had 3 uneventful nights in the valley. The 4th night was different. Other than the noise of the stream, the normal night sounds were generally absent, except for the occasional owl calls or other sporadic noises. It was quite eerie that night. We went to bed around 1 a.m. This time we were camping in tents and not in the van. About 1 hour later, we heard the familiar footfalls, this time descending the valley wall on the opposite side of the creek. There were 2 or 3 footfalls, a sliding sound, then 20 to 30 seconds of silence. This process repeated until, we assumed, the person reached the edge of the creek opposite us. After what seemed like an eternity, the person crossed the creek very slowly. We could hear gentle splashes with each step. Once in our camp, we could hear shuffling sounds. Our fire had gone out, so we could not see anything through the tent walls. None of us really cared to confront whoever or whatever was visiting. After about 30 minutes of shuffling, our cooler was forcefully knocked to the ground. Silence followed and we all fell back asleep. I awoke sometime later to the sound of someone approaching the tent. As I looked up through the rainfly, a head appeared and looked down at me. As we were under the tree canopy, the lighting was very poor. I could see that the head was very large, there was coarse hair on top and sticking out to the sides in places, but the face was in shadow. At that point I gasped and the head quickly moved out of view. I could hear it cross the creek and head up the hill and it was gone. I mentioned this to the guys the next morning and none of them noticed it return for the second visit but me. We had no further disturbance. Neither time did I feel threatened or any negative feelings other than the fear of encountering an unknown visitor, whether human or otherwise. But the head looking in the tent, and the stealthiness of the visitor, clued me in that this was not a man looking to scare us but rather likely a startled Bigfoot, the first encounter, and then an inquisitive Bigfoot, second encounter. I poked around quite a bit on the property and didn't see any obvious sign of a large animal, but there were lots of deer and the disused cabin had several bedding areas in it. Something or someone had bedded down there many times in the past, but the areas looked disused as well. Also note these bedding areas were on both the first and second floors of the building. Also noticed, nothing out of the ordinary either time. Other witnesses. 4 witness, no contact with any of them. Now environment. First incident on private property, moderate hardwood forest and also a valley, creek system. Follow-up investigation report by BFRO investigator Eric Lester. I spoke to the witness about these incidents for a couple hours, and found him to be sincere about what he experienced. According to him, the slope that the creature walked up on, using 2 legs, would be very hard for a human to climb, without using one's arms. This occurred about 10 p.m. The scream came from their north, the direction the creature ran towards, and lasted about 8 seconds. It wasn't too far away, possibly 1,000 feet. The passenger side window was left open a bit, and there was food portioned out onto dinner plates on the passenger seat. One of the witness friends saw the hairy arm reach in for the food. The witness himself didn't see this, but was told about it afterward. 2 plates were taken, containing macaroni, beans, and hot dogs. A year later they returned to the same general area for more camping. He got the impression that whatever was coming down the hillside was trying to be quiet. The 2 friends he was with had awakened when the cooler fell in the camp. When they talked about the noise, all sounds from outside the tent quieted. Eventually the camp intruder had come up to the tent and looked down inside of it. The witness had been awake at this time and stared at it for about 5 seconds. After it moved out of view, he heard it cross the creek and assumed it left. Nothing else happened that night. There were no footprints to be found on the dry, compact ground, and no food was taken. The bedding areas in the cabin were made of piled up leaf litter. Please see report number 25658 for the more recent incident.
Man hears multiple moans and sees a gray creature outside of Bloomington. Year 2009 season, spring month, March date, 16 state, Indiana County, Monroe County. Location details: Bloomington location removed per witness. Nearest town, Bloomington. Nearest road, not sure. Observe. I have had 2 possible, Bigfoot-related, incidents. I've wanted to discuss the older incident for quite some time but have hesitated to do so. The second incident occurred March 16, 2009 and unnerved me enough to go ahead with these reports. Note: for the older incident, please see report number 25793. This occurred on the western outskirts of Bloomington, Indiana. While this happened in a subdivision, it is an isolated subdivision surrounded by fields, small growth forest and quarries. Only a few miles further west, the forestation thickens and several creeks and streams run through this area. Deer are seen here frequently, as well as other game animals and occasionally turkeys. My girlfriend and I arrived at her parents' home in this neighborhood. We exited the car and I immediately heard a very, very odd sound. They were short moans, about 2 seconds apart at first, then many different timing variations. But they seemed to come consistently in groups of 4, with each call lasting between 2 to 10 seconds. After my initial encounters with what I came to believe was a Bigfoot, I found the BFRO site and listened to all the sounds, viewed all the images, read as many reports as I could. I became an avid fan of the investigation and the science behind the creature. I recognized this sound as similar to the Ohio moans but shorter in duration. I'll have to listen to them again to make certain, but these were not anything like the whoops, screams or bionic bird calls that I've heard. These were definitely loud, powerful, reverberating moans. I have heard owls call out responses to environmental noises and also heard coyotes howling many times. You can tell the difference based on the sheer power of the tones. This was not an owl or coyote. My girlfriend likened it to a very sick or injured cow, but none are near this location. She had heard sick cows before and this was not a sick cow mooing. It was, again, definitely a moaning sound. We listened for 2 or 3 minutes then went inside. She immediately went out the back door to listen, as she knew that I would want to do so. We listened another few minutes and I decided to try and call back. I first tried mimicking the moan and, not receiving a response, I tried to make a whoop sound as best I could. The moaning stopped immediately. Off to our right, about 200 yards away in a stand of trees, I could see a few trees visibly shake. Not wiggle in the wind, but shake like an elephant had just moved between them. I heard no noises like breathing, growling, grumbling, footfalls or otherwise. However, at that moment, off to our right a dog started barking ferociously and we could see it backing up closer to its house. This continued down the row of houses. The dog would bark, growl then back up, and it was in succession, getting closer to us. I was very scared at this point as, even if it was not a Bigfoot, I'd apparently gotten its attention and it was moving towards us. After passing the barking dog 3 houses away on our right, the dog silenced and everything fell silent. At that moment, I saw some movement out in the field to the west of the trees, about 50 feet beyond the stand of trees. I heard a couple of quick moans, then something streaked across the field from north to south. To describe what I could see is difficult. The moon and starlight was enough that I could see a shape in a grayish color. The figure was definitely on 2 legs. It was running very fast, but the legs were taking very large strides while the body appeared to be kept almost parallel to the group, like you would run if someone were shooting at you. The figure did not appear to be much taller than a normal person, though it did seem, again, in poor lighting conditions, to be stockier than an average man. The shoulders were much larger than the waist and the legs were long and appeared lean but strong. The trunk of the being was too blurry to see any detail. The creature took 4 to 5 long and power strides and dropped to the ground behind what appeared to be a bush or clump of weeds. At that point, I felt nervous enough that we went inside. I peeked out several more times in the ensuing few minutes and saw nothing. I had been kicking myself about not having a camera, but the lighting was so poor and the movement so fast that an indistinct gray blur is all that would have turned out. About 10 minutes after all of this ended, we heard the sound of metal clanking and being broken. My girlfriend advised that there was lawn furniture further out in the field and it sounded, to her, like someone was throwing or breaking it. I looked a little later and yes, in fact, the lawn furniture had been strewn about when it had been sitting upright when we arrived home. I didn't see this as I am not all that familiar with the setting. She noticed it was upright because she knew where to look at. There were no storms, wind or other natural disturbances in the area that night, though I cannot preclude a common animal, such as a deer, may have run through the area and knocked everything over. Other than being on edge the rest of the evening, waiting for something to happen, nothing else was noted. In talking with her further about this, I learned that the neighborhood is aware of this creature. They have nicknamed it the Troll, and generally give it a wide berth and respect it. They say it lives in a sinkhole further out west, but I'm not certain exactly where. I've asked her family to take me out to the sinkhole so I can take a look but have not made the trip yet. Sightings of this creature are seasonal, though I don't know which season's time frames it is commonly present in. This second sighting felt a little more threatening, or at least I had the vibe that the situation was not safe or controlled, from either side, mine or the creature. I got the distinct impression that this was a juvenile calling out, and when he got an unexpected response, he came to investigate, chest puffed out and ready to rock. But he quickly backed off and instead sought to either hide or make his way across the field and away from us. When we went inside, I think he showed his displeasure by trashing the lawn furniture. I could easily be completely wrong in my assessment, but those were the feelings I got from how things played out. Also noticed, nothing out of the ordinary either time. Other witnesses. 2 witnesses, only I am willing to discuss at this time, unfortunately.
Other stories. Bloomington. Many stories of Bigfoot-like creatures in the area.
Time and conditions, between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. Some starlight, low moonlight or cover blocking light. Weather was cool and clear. Environment. A field near thick forest. Not familiar with the area beyond that. Follow-up investigation report by BFRO investigator Eric Lester. I spoke to the witness at length about his experiences, and decided to separate his older experiences into a new report. See report number 25793. The moans were fairly close to them, within 300 yards. He seemed to think the moans were from one individual. As the creature moved through the forest, he noticed the trees shaking, and it was about 100 feet away from them at the closest point. The thick brush area that the creature ran into was about 70 feet away. The only thing he noticed after it moved into this spot was possibly a head pop up, then down very quickly. The witness states that some of the neighborhood residents refer to there being a troll in the neighborhood. He couldn't add much detail to this description, for none was ever given to him by anyone. It's possible that other sightings have occurred in this area, with the witnesses choosing to not look into it further. After speaking to the witness about his experiences, I believe him to be truthful and sincere.
Large, unknown man-like creature approaches man tending rabbits. Year, 1980 season, summer month, June state, Indiana County, Vanderburgh County. Location details, wooded suburban, rural area north of city of Evansville, in. Area bordered by Evergreen Road, Darmstadt Road, Old State Road, and Wortman Road. Nearest town, Evansville. Nearest road, Berry Drive, near US Route 41. Observed. I was going to feed rabbits I raised, when I heard someone walking through the brush. When I looked, I saw a dark figure of what looked like a man. When I said, "Hello," it swayed from side to side and studied me, then began to approach me. I then could see very deep eye sockets, oddly shaped, and it was covered in black hair. I turned and ran to the house. No sounds were heard. I was 20 feet or less from the creature when I saw it. Also noticed, in a nearby woods, my friend was riding his mini bike. He had stopped to take a break when this creature charged through the woods into the clearing where he was stopped. It was sweating, with a beet red face and winded. He started his bike, startling the creature. He took off to home, and he also told me of seeing strange feces in a nearby abandoned barn during the same year. Other witnesses, just myself. I also have a friend who saw the same creature about the same time that year in a nearby woods. Other stories. See above. Time and conditions. Between 5 o'clock to 6 a.m. Very quiet, still, just before sunrise. Warm and clear. Environment. Suburban yards between two lakes, also nearby wooded uninhabited by people areas. Sighting area connects to large woods, ash, hickory, oak, trees, etc. Said to be small cave in center of area. My actual sighting spot was a vacant lot behind home, very dense thicket, creature walked through. Also railroad right-of-way in this area, ditches, valleys, hilly.
Man has nighttime sighting of creature walking across his property. Year, 2018 season, summer month, March date. It's still going on. State, Indiana County, Martin County. Location details. We live around caves and we are wondering if they may be living in the caves behind us. We've heard it every night for the past several months. Last night I heard toys moving and somewhere in our creek this morning. It's become very scary out here in the country. Nearest town, Luguti. Nearest road, US 50. Observed. The past several months we have had some very strange activity going on around our house. We live out in the country and we've ignored a lot of it. But here lately we can't ignore the activity going on. About a month or two ago, my husband went outside to smoke. He heard something, and as he looked in our driveway, he seen an animal that stood about 7 feet tall, all hairy. He couldn't explain it except that it looked like one of our dogs on 2 feet and extremely tall. It walked past our trailer, and that's how he could guess the height could be. We've heard what sound like a baseball bat hitting a tree. We've heard whistles and calls of what a Bigfoot sounds like. We've had chickens and cats go missing. Every night about the same time you can hear footsteps and sounds. It's to the point where we are scared to go outside. We've never believed in Bigfoot till we seen it and have heard them. I'm sure there are more than one around here cause we live near caves. They sound like they are all around us at night. Also noticed, we had a ball in our yard and after finding it in the woods one day and down the road from us another day and bring it back several times, it went missing and we've not been able to find it. I just find it odd that this has just happened after we have been hearing noises that sound like Bigfoot. Other witnesses. My husband and I were both outside before he went to work. He was smoking a cigarette before work and I had my dad come out and listen and kinda look around. But by the time my dad came out it had ran off. Other stories. No, we have not. Everyone thinks we are crazy. Time and conditions. It starts around 9:30 p.m. and it goes on for hours after. And it's very dark. Environment. We live in a rocky area and we have several trees around us too. We have creeks and waterfalls. It's part of the state forest property. Follow-up investigation report by BFRO investigator Chuck Shutters. I have spoken to the witness at length and found him to be credible and sincere in what he observed. When he described what he saw as looking like one of his dogs on 2 feet, he was referring strictly to the length and color of the creature's hair and not physical features. He described the creature as 7 to 7.5 feet tall, covered with dark brown hair that was about 3 inches in length and very muscular. He observed the creature walk down the driveway and continue behind his trailer where he lost sight of it. The witness observed a profile view of the creature walking left to right at a distance of 75 to 100 feet. The sighting lasted less than 10 seconds and the witness was able to provide the additional details. He stated the creature had a flat human-like face with no noticeable snout. He also stated the creature had long swinging arms and walked just like a man. I have had the privilege of visiting the property on several different occasions and have gotten a chance to spend quite a bit of time with the family. Despite the creature's bold and sometimes harassing behavior, they have been very open and forthright about the ongoing activity and have welcomed on-site investigations.
A TV rider has close encounter at night near Patronville, with an artist sketch. Year, 2008 season, fall month, September state, Indiana County, Spencer County nearest town, Patronville nearest road, West County Road 300S observed. It's taken me a long time to share this story, about 7 years. My family, friends and I used to ride ATVs very often, usually on the weekends. I had the biggest four-wheeler, so I usually stayed in the very back in case someone got into trouble or hung up. There was about 15 ATVs. One night we were going through a classified forest called Kramer's Woods, which is an old-growth forest with a tight winding trail and massive trees. As we went around a wet, muddy turn, I seen the ATV in front of mine. Lights reflecting off the water hit something behind a tree that I was approaching. It looked hairy, but I wasn't sure. Well, as I approached the tree while turning, the ATV left the thing, which was on my right, and I locked eyes. I'm 44 now, so I would have been 37 at the time. I'm 6 feet tall, 250 pounds and rigid. I'm an old country boy and fear no man and could match or best most in strength. But this thing was no man. It was massive and was barely hiding behind this massive tree. It was tight against the tree with both hands flat on it and its chest tight against its hands. What happens next is very strange to me, but I know they are more than just an animal now. When he and I looked at each other, we both knew he goofed and got caught in among that chain of ATVs. I was instantly terrified, but then instantly knew he was as scared as I was and wanted this situation to end. It was like we were in each other's head and came to an agreement to just go on. My wife was riding with me, so I never reacted because she would have screamed bloody murder if she would have seen it. It was 3 feet from us. I knew it was a male, just knew. He was at least 8.5 tall. I was the same height on my four-wheeler as I was standing, and I looked way up at it. It's funny how small you feel. This thing could have easily have grabbed me, my wife or entire ATV and threw us. That's how powerful it looked. I can't put to words how powerful it looked. I have gone online several times to try and see what I saw. Seen the white one on YouTube, but this one looked more human. People report red triangulated eyes, smelly and long matted coat. This one was none of that. Its coat was brownish orange with 2 to 3 straight hair. I could see grayish skin and muscle mass. There is no bodybuilder on the planet with the size muscle mass this thing had. Not much of a neck, but its head was huge. Its eyes were 2 to 3 times bigger, but just like ours with whites and pupil. The whites of his eyes I'll never forget because his eyes were what I was stuck on the most. The rest of him was at a glance. His mouth was very wide, 4 to 5, with its lips pulled tight from fear, just like us. As I pulled away, he took 1 step and vanished. I was amazed at how he was just gone, that quick. Other witnesses, other stories. No time and conditions. Night, dark but lit up from ATV lights reflecting off all the water. Environment: swamp, creek bottom. Forest follow-up investigation report by BFRO investigator Aaron Browder. On the 8th of September 15, I called and spoke to the witness at great length. The incident occurred in September 2008. The witness is still very shaken by the sighting and it is still hard for him to talk about it. I was only the third person he's ever told. The others were his father and his current girlfriend. He stated that he'd hoped that by telling others what happened it would help him get over and deal with the sighting. Per the witness, the events and sighting are ingrained in his brain, and he can see it like it happened yesterday. I worked with sketch artist Alex Evans and my witness, and after going back and forth with the details a few times, the witness has confirmed that this is exactly what he saw. The weather was clear, moon was out, and temperature in the 60s. It was close to 11 p.m. and they were riding in what is known as Kramer Original Woods. They were moving slow through a bottom area that was muddy. The location is very rural and the closest major town is Rockport, with Patronville as the closest small town. The forest is an old-growth hardwood forest, very close to the Ohio River, and is a protected nature preserve of 224 acres. The witness was standing while riding on the last four-wheeler. There was roughly 20 feet between himself and the four-wheeler in front of him. The trail curved to the right and then back to the left. As the four-wheeler in front passed a tree on its right, something started to poke out from behind the tree. The movement caught his eye. His ex-wife was looking to the left towards the other four-wheelers ahead. As he approached the tree, he can see him, and they make eye contact. The witness refers to this creature as him. The creature was pressed against the tree, palms flat against it, chest against his hands. He stated he was so close that, if he could have melted into the tree, he would have. As he got closer to the tree, he stated he was focused on its eyes and mouth. The eyes were large, 2 to 3 times bigger than ours, and the mouth was extremely wide, 5 inches, and its lips were thin and held tight. He states the eyes looked human and he could see the whites. The witness states that he felt that the creature was scared and so was he. In describing the face, he stated it looked Neanderthal and was more human than ape. The head was large and round. It was not conical. It was bearded, but he could see skin which he described as grayish tan. He stated the nose was wide, kind of pugged. He didn't really notice any ears. When asked if he could see any other features on the face, wrinkles, etc., he just said he looked like he was in his prime, could take on the world, and was handsome. The tree was at least 4 feet wide, an old hickory or oak. As he passed the tree, he came within 5 feet of the creature. He estimated it to be 8 to 8.5 feet tall with wide muscular shoulders, 3.5 feet wide, and 700 pounds. The shoulders were very rounded, muscular like a bodybuilder. The hair was brownish-orange, 2 to 3 inches and straight and looked clean. There was more hair on the forearms than the upper arms. The arms were very long. He stated it was massive, very lean, and muscular. It had very little to no hair on its hands. After passing the tree, he looked over his shoulder and it took one step and disappeared into the darkness. He was amazed at the quickness of the step and it was just gone. In that step he could see its buttocks, which were very muscular, and noticed the muscularity and shine on the hair of its back. The entire sighting from first glimpse to the end lasted maybe 15 seconds. The witness has not returned to the exact spot in the 7 years since. He wanted to return the next day but was afraid. He stated this is not a dumb animal, and for those that think they are apes, are wrong. He felt it had feelings, intelligence, and emotion. He said the scariest thing is realizing that they have been there all along. I visited the area of the encounter on the 3rd of October 15 and find it to be a very good area and one I would expect possible Sasquatch activity.